Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to the second debate of the question, are there scientific mistakes in the Quran? And this is between Muslim apologist Nadir Ahmad and apostate prophet. Apostate prophet, tell us something about yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm an ex-Muslim. Thanks, by the way. I'm an ex-Muslim who is actively criticizing Islam on YouTube and social media in general. I have left Islam quite a while ago, very long ago, and this is what I'm pretty much doing. Yeah.
Okay, and Nadir Ahmad, tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Sure. My name is Nadir Ahmed. I've done many of these type of debates and discussions, answering some of the objections, towards Islam. I also discuss and debate why the Quran is a scientific miracle, because there's many statements in the Quran which agree with modern science. And so, apart from that, this is just something I kind of do in my part time, and that's about it.
With all our interactions, sir, I must apologize that I said your name Ahmad instead of Ahmed. That's,
Oh, that's
that's
good.
that's something that I, in particular, should have been more aware of. My apologies there. All right,
You're,
so
you're in the ballpark.
all right, so we are going to be doing 10-minute opening speeches for each, and there's going to be five-minute initial responses each. This is the format that I was given. 3-minute back and forth, 5 times each, 5-minute closing each, and that should be about 70 minutes in total, and then we'll move into Q&A. As always, my wife is in the backstage. She's going to be monitoring the chat. We will pull up relevant questions. So if it's not relevant, it's not going to get chosen. All right. Now, I believe the affirmative is in the hands of apostate prophet. So you will be starting off. Am I right?
Yeah, that works for me. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right, and take it away. I will begin that. Wait, hold on. I did not get my timer ready. So let me do that. Foolish me didn't have that ready. Okay. Begin, please.
All right. I just want to set my own quickly to be aware of the time. Okay. Well, again, first off, thanks everybody. Thanks, Aaron, for making this possible again. Thanks for moderating, and thank you, Nadir, so much for again agreeing to have a debate with me. So the question that we are confronted with today is whether the Quran contradicts science. To many of us, especially to me and others who don't believe in the Quran, the answer could be pretty clear. The Quran is a book that came into existence in a culture and time that was very ignorant of the natural world, and that was scientifically seen very underdeveloped. While the Greeks many centuries ago were, for example, aware of the shape of the earth, 7th century Arabians were not. They were living in very substandard circumstances. But it's no surprise that they were scientifically unaware, that they were unaware of the scientific world, because many Scandinavians, for example, were unaware of what the world looks like until approximately the 10th century AD. It is expected that the Quran, if it makes scientific claims, is therefore possibly wrong. That's entirely normal. The issue here is that this is not the Muslim position. The Muslim position is, the Islamic position is that the Quran was authored by Allah, that it is the reflection of Allah's eternal speech, and Allah is the almighty, all-knowing creator of the universe. He knows everything. It is Allah's direct speech, the Quran. So everything that is in the Quran must therefore be true. All claims that it makes must be true. If there's only one single mistake, that would mean that the Quran does not come from a divine authorship, and that the Quran is therefore wrong and Islam is wrong. There is no mercy in this. In fact, the Quran itself acknowledges this and says, if it had been from any other than Allah, you would have found therein mistakes. It says so in chapter 4, verse 82. Now, the Quran tries to assertively explain the world around us, and it is in that regard extremely ignorant. And I want to present that with a few points. Just a quick note: I receive a lot of noise from somebody's keyboard or something. If you could. My screen is frozen. Oh.
Yeah, we can still hear you, which is the important thing. But yeah, your camera's not moving.
I'm sorry. I don't know why that is happening.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Let me share that screen again. Sorry about that. I'll do.
All right, I stopped the timer. Once we pick up again, once he comes back on, there we go.
Okay, I'm back. Can I continue?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how much time I have left, but
you're 3 minutes in.
Okay. So I want to present with a few points, with 3 points, that the Quran is very ignorant when it comes to the natural world, although it claims to be miraculous and accurate in that. The first point is the stars. The Quran does not understand what stars are, which is entirely normal because people in that environment, in that culture, did not understand what stars are. They simply looked up to the sky and saw these little objects up in the sky. The Quran describes the stars as an adornment in the sky of the world, or the nearest sky, literally, in Quran chapter 41, verse 12, for example. People back then thought so, that they thought there's a sky above us and that the stars are in that near sky. But what we know, for example, that stars are giant objects, that our sun, for example, is a star, that there are millions, billions of stars out there that are solitary or surrounded by different objects. It is not like they are adornments, little objects that are in some near heaven. We see that in Quran chapter 67, verse 5, for example, the Quran describes stars also as missiles thrown at rebellious devils, which also we see in a report about Muhammad. Muhammad thought of shooting stars, which people called shooting stars back then, as stars which are up there thrown at rebellious devils. We know by now that shooting stars are unfortunately called that way. They are actually meteors, which are not bright. They simply enter our atmosphere and light up, looking like stars to us. The Quran further describes in chapter 81, verse 2, for example, that stars are objects that could fall down on us, and that when Judgment Day is near and the world is coming to an end, the stars will fall down on us. This is a prominent narrative in the Quran. Secondly, moving on from stars, I want to come to the sun. In the Quran's culture and time, in Arabia, 7th century, people did not understand the solar system. They didn't understand the nature of the sun and our world. And we see that in the Quran, for example, the Quran describes that the sun is this shining light which travels up there and travels to a stopping point throughout the day. In Quran chapter 36, verse 38, it clearly says that the sun runs toward a fixed resting place, or a stopping point. In Quran chapter 91, verse 1 and 2, it describes that the moon is following the sun, which clearly indicates again that it thinks, that the author of the Quran thinks the sun is this object that is floating up there to some place. Whereas we know that we are in a solar system. The sun is at the center of our solar system, and we are revolving around the sun. And due to this, because we are turning, it looks to us as if the sun was traveling, but the author of the Quran thought that it literally was traveling. Further, in Quran chapter 36, verse 40, for example, it also affirms this once more and says that the moon and the sun can never overtake each other. From here, we also see that this is not merely a metaphorical or a visual description of the sun and the moon chasing each other. It actually says that the sun and the moon are chasing each other and cannot overtake each other. If it was only a visual description, then this claim that the sun and the moon cannot overtake each other would be false, because we have solar eclipses or lunar eclipses, for example, which basically mean that the moon is getting in the way of the sun. So in this regard, the Quran is ignorant of the sun. And finally, I want to move on to another point, which is about the sky, the earth, and the universe in general, the cosmos in general. I have presented this before in many of my videos and made a depiction, an illustration of what the world looks like according to the Quran. I wish I had prepared that as a presentation, actually. But I want to read simply this one verse, which I believe says a lot about the Quran's knowledge of the natural world. Quran chapter 13, verse 2, it says the following: He, Allah, created the heavens without pillars that you see, and has cast into the earth firmly set mountains, lest it should shift you, and dispersed therein from every creature. And we sent down rain from the sky, and made grow therein plants of every noble kind as provision. This is in Quran chapter 13, verse 2. There are so many points here. It says that it describes the sky as this ceiling which Allah lifted. He raised it, and seemingly he would need for that pillars, and he raised it with pillars that we can't see, or without pillars that we can't see. He set he set mountains into the earth. Mountains are not objects that are planted into the earth. Mountains are part of the ground that we walk on, and they were not placed. They elevated due to circumstances, shifts. And he sent rain down from the sky. So the Quran also describes a universe that is made of water, in which essentially there is water, and Allah sends rain down from the sky to us because He is above the sky. And this sounds rather ridiculous, because I don't even know if I need to further describe this. I would love to discuss this matter further. On top of that, as said, there are these 3 points, and on top of that, I could go ahead and argue that, lastly, ignorance about the natural world around us and things that are lacking, that are missing in the Quran, could also be proof that the Quran contradicts science. I cannot make such a claim, but I would like to argue, if we really want to seek wisdom, if we really want to seek knowledge in the Quran about our natural world, then shouldn't we find some information, some revolutionary information in the Quran? We do not find anything about space, which is basic. It is right out there. We don't find space because people didn't understand what space is. We don't find different planets. We don't find suns, so different stars described as suns. We don't find our solar system. We don't find a galaxy, no other galaxies. We don't find the universe. We don't find gravity, the creation, or how the universe came into existence. We don't find anything. We simply find contradictory statements, very strong false assertions about the natural world around us, ambiguous words that need reinterpretation, and other than that, simply a complete lack of knowledge, which shows to me that the Quran is simply ignorant of science.
Very good. Very good. You're just in time. All right, and Nadir, I'm going to reset and let you begin. Hold on a sec.
All right. Can you see my shared screen?
I do not. What do I need to change, Peter? There we go. Oh, I got you. Wait, hold on a second. There it is. That is added, isn't it? Okay. Do I need to do anything else, or just do that? Okay. Okay. Do I need to set it back? Because I just changed it to full screen. Is that right? Okay. All right. Nadir, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for that, Apostate Prophet. That was very interesting. So tonight I will be talking about why the Quran is in perfect harmony with modern science. Here are the 3 contentions I will be debating. Number 1, there is no explicit statement in the Quran which contradicts documented scientific fact. Look, my opponent, Apostate Prophet, was up there for 10 minutes. Did he give you a single reference from any book, periodical, journal, or any kind of reputable online sources? Absolutely not. The second contention I'll be debating is that I will be presenting to you clear, whatever I say will be based upon documented facts from academic sources, showing you that the Quran is in complete harmony with modern science. And the third contention tonight, nothing my opponent will present to you is based on scientific fact. So when he says, you see, the Quran said that the stars are an adornment, there is no documented fact from science today which this contradicts. And if that is not the case, then I would challenge him to show me that. So we have not seen anything in terms of where the Quran contradicts science, and I will address all the points which he brings up in just a second here. So I want to also make it clear tonight, what does it mean to contradict science, so that we are all clear on that. So let me go ahead and take you to my little presentation over here. So this is based upon, I borrowed the article from Professor Larry W. Cusick, Contradictions in According with Scientific Principles. Not that, oh, well, this seems ridiculous to me. This is not what a scientific contradiction is, okay? So just so we're all as clear as mud as what it is, I give you some examples of what a contradiction even looks like so that we can now apply the same test, the same standard to the Quran. And this was actually very easy. So I'll just go like very quickly. Here's an example of a scientific contradiction. And this is what we want to ask of the Quran, the same challenge. For example, Galen, a physician, he said, blood forms in the liver. But science tells us that it is actually red blood cells start as immature cells in bone marrow. Notice on my screen, again, you're just going to have to hit pause on the YouTube video to get all my documentation here, but I'm quoting these, reputable references to substantiate what I'm saying. The Bible is another example of a good contradiction. The Bible talks about the mustard seed, though it is the smallest of all seeds. Palmer Community College tells us that it is actually the orchid seed, which is the smallest seed. And now, of course, I've got all my links there, which you can go ahead and look up. The Bible tells us that there are, there's something which is known as the virginity test. It says, and that they shall spread the garments before the elders of the city. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 17. And if no proof of the young woman virginity can be found, science. Virginity tests are unscientific and medically unnecessary. Furthermore, it states, the hymen examination does not accurately, reliably predict virginity status. So the list can go on. I can show you this is what it means to contradict modern science. And this you will never find in the Quran. And so I've actually created the same type of document for Apostate Prophet, which I will give him this link in the chat. And we want him to, in the same way, show a verse of the Quran and then produce a documented scientific fact like how I have just done over here. And that you will never be able to do so. So let's go on with, let's go really quickly and address some of the points which he has raised here. He said, you see, well, we already knocked out the adornment ones. As we know, that's in complete harmony with modern science. There is nothing which could, which documents scientific facts. So what is another one which he raised up? He said, basically, he said, that the missiles, stars were set as missiles or something like that, if I understand it correctly. So let's go over there real quick here. So the verse which he is quoting is actually the first thing, the first point which I want to raise about that. The actual ayat verse of the Quran, it says that these are referring to lamps. The actual text of the Quran is actually referring to lamps. If I can find it here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so there's a first point of failure with his argument. The Quran doesn't even talk about stars. And then finally, this is talking about God throwing these lamps at devils. What is a scientific position to gods and devils? And what would science have to say about that? Well, let me go ahead and share that with you here real quick. So, there you go. I will be quote. First of all, a miracle. This is something which is. Let me first give you a definition of what a miracle is. This is an event that appears inexplicable by the laws of nature. And here is what this is. I'm quoting actually a he's like a Dr. William Reveal. He's a biochemist from the director of microscopy at blah 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 UCC. Okay, you guys got to just hit pause on YouTube to get my references. Here's what he says. Because science has nothing to say about the supernatural world, like stars or, lamps being hurled at demons. Let me repeat, science has nothing to say about the supernatural world. Does not mean that it denies the supernatural world. In his article, he says scientists say nothing about the supernatural. So because science says nothing about the supernatural, it can never contradict science. So that argument is debunked. Now, please note what I'm keeping my promise here. As I said, I will only present to you documented scientific facts. And this is not his opinion. He's giving the what is called the consensus of the scientific community. So, but wait, there's more on that. Let's go back to this lamp. So there's multiple points of failure. Then he said, this contradicts science. But then when we actually go down and look to see what is a scientific fact that it is contradicting, wait a second. He never told us. It's a hoax. This whole argument, though it has already been defeated because the scientists have already said, sorry, we don't get involved in these kind of things. It's a hoax. He never gave us what was a scientific fact. So in the end, he sent us on this big wild goose chase to end up nowhere. Then finally, he said, you see the near sky, that, yeah, there you go. That contradicts science right there, because the Quran talked about in the nearest heaven, you have the sun. Or I'm sorry, you have the stars or something like that. Well, what do you have to say about other scientists? For example, what you see on my screen, who talk about that they're talking about looking for stars near to the earth. So my point here, even the scientists make this statement. Let us look at another article over here. I know this is kind of a bit hard to see. Look what she says over here. This is a researcher, and this is from Central SF State News. She says over here that the amount of types of elements within a star of stars near to the earth, which is an identical verse, identical to what we see in the Quran. So as we can see, the scientists themselves use this type of language. So once again, that argument doesn't make any sense. And then he said, you see, the Quran talks about that the sky has a ceiling. There you go. That contradicts modern science. So let us see if that's true. What would Apostate Prophet have to say about scientists talking about life on the earth ceiling? And again, you can see the references on my screen right here. And so let's give another reference over here. Here he talks about the atmospheric ceiling. So even the scientists themselves, they're using the exact same terminology of the Quran. But this all goes back to this great challenge, which I am presenting to you. And this is very important here. You see, the reason why Apostate Prophet was not able to produce for you any kind of scientific documentation is because science will never endorse the things he says. Science will never endorse these type of things like, oh, the sky doesn't have any ceilings or things like that. Now, if the Quran explicitly said that that there was a solid mass up there and the sky was a solid mass, then yes, of course, this would be an error. So I want to go back to this great challenge over here. I see I only have a few minutes. I would challenge Apostate Prophet in the same way how I showed contradictions in the Bible and other places. Do the same thing with the Quran. I'm going to give you this in the chat so you can have this document. And this is a good test, a good scientific test to see which document we can find that the Quran is contradicting. So I think my time is almost up over here, so I'll go ahead and give this to you in the chat, and or I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to move into the next phase. We did both of our 10-minute opening speeches. Now we're going to be doing 5-minute initial responses each. So the first 5-minute initial response will go to Apostate Prophet to query Nadir Ahmed.
Yeah, I would like to make use of Nadir Ahmed's little document that he sent to me.
You got it. It's in the chat.
Okay, I would like to fill that out. How do I do this? Do I just edit here directly and you can see that?
Definitely, you can type
okay,
right into
okay,
there.
Wonderful. So I have something to offer here, which is just give me a second. So we have in one of these cases a Quran verse, which I will put in there right away. This Quran verse says that it is Allah who erected the heavens without pillars so you can see them. But I want to focus on one certain thing here. Oh wait, this is the wrong verse. Which one did I copy? 13.2. Anyway, I just talked about how Allah put the mountains on the sky. So let me just put the mountains into the earth. So Allah plants mountains into earth, and I want to debunk this by posting something very simple, which is this. A link that leads to Ducksters, Science Earth, Science Mountain Geology. Can you please open this link?
Oh, you want me to? Okay, sure.
Yeah, sure.
1 second over here. There you go.
See, this Ducksters is a science page in which we see Earth science for kids. So here's basic scientific education for children. In order to avoid scientific education for adults, I have simply referred to a scientific education for children. Here we see, if you want me to read it quickly, what is a mountain? A mountain is a geological landform that rises above the surrounding land. Typically, a mountain will rise at least 1,000 feet above sea level. Some mountains exceed 10,000 feet above sea level, with the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest, rising 29,036 feet. Small mountains below whatever are usually called hills. How are mountains formed? Mountains are most often formed by movement of the tectonic plates in the Earth's crust. Great mountain ranges like the Himalayas often form along the boundaries of these plates. Tectonic plates move very slowly. It can take millions and millions of years for mountains to form. This is from ducksters.com, which is a website to educate children about science. And this has hereby debunked the Quran. Thank you for this presentation. I would like to now get rid of the screen sharing, and please, if you can come back to me, I would like to talk about the other issues here.
Oh, you want me to stop the share?
Yeah, please.
Okay, sure.
So I believe that was a sufficient presentation to show that the Quran contradicts science for kids, for example, in this case. But I want to respond to the other points too. The one point was that I should present documents which clearly show that the Quran contradicts science. I don't believe that I need to show documents which show to us that the sun and the moon do not chase each other up in the sky, that the sun does not go to a resting place, and that stars are not missiles shot at rebellious devils. I don't see why quoting the Bible is in any way relevant. It just looks like a red herring, a distraction from our discussion. Also, a point about science. I think Nadir Ahmed greatly misunderstands what science is. Science is the capturing of facts about the natural world around us. They are not meant to make any analysis about the supernatural. So science concerns itself with finding and explaining and describing what happens in our natural world, which is very normal in that case, that it does not address religion. That is very obvious. This is what science is. I think Nadir Ahmed greatly misunderstands this. And finally, one point more. When I talked about stars thrown as missiles, he said the Quran doesn't say stars, it only says lamps. But I want to say this again. The Quran says that there are lamps in the nearest sky for beautification and also as protection thrown at rebellious devils. So I want to ask Nadir Ahmed here, what exactly are these lamps then? What exactly are these lamps which Allah placed into the nearest heaven as beauty and also as protection against rebellious devils? What exactly are these lamps? What are they? Because to me, it's very clear. These are supposed to be stars. I think that is pretty much it. Oh yeah, and the sky. My point with the sky was not that it is a ceiling, but it was raised by Allah with invisible pillars, which is just, I don't need to reference any document for that, please. But thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that.
Aaron,
Okay.
you're muted.
Of course. All right. So Nadir, it's your 5 minutes now.
Okay, thank you so much for bringing up this issue about this. I think if I understand you correctly, the Quran talks about mountains were thrown down, and according to you, that's not right because mountains are created by plate tectonics, which go up like this. Did I understand your argument correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. All right, let me share my screen over here. Well, the first question is, that's true. Mountains are created by plate tectonics, but it took 1 billion years for the plate tectonics to even emerge. As you could see from my reference from, I think it's nature.com. Yeah, right over here. 1 billion years for the plate tectonics to form. What about before then? What about before the plate tectonics? Are you now going to tell us that there were no mountains on the face of this earth? Well, Science Today says over here that so the earth was just out there floating in space. This is, I think it's from Life Science right here. Oh, no, sorry, this is from The Conversation. It says And so there were volcanoes all over the place. This is talking about the very beginning of the Earth's creation. And there was hot lava and gas everywhere. So the question is, okay, well, are volcanoes mountains? Yes, they are, as we can see over here. So once again, we see the Quran is in complete harmony with modern science. In the very beginning of the creation of the world, God threw down these mountains, and actually the right understanding of it is but we'll get into that later. And so I think the mistake Apostate Prophet did, he was thinking, okay, plate tectonics, they go up like this to make the mountains true. But it took 1 billion years for the plate tectonics to even get there. Now, does the Quran actually talk about this period of time? If you read the beginning of the chapter 16, verse 1, it states very clearly that this throwing down of the mountains took place when Allah created the world. So when he created the earth, these plate tectonics were basically thrown down. And here's the hadith which goes into more detail. The Prophet said, Allah created the earth, it started shaking. So then he created the mountains. And so then it goes on over here. So look how the Quran is scientifically accurate. So his attempt to try to show scientific error has backfired on him. So there's no way is there any contradiction. So now let me address some of his other claims which he said. He said, you see, he keeps going on about the missiles, that the lamps. What are the lamps? I don't have a problem talking to you about that, Apostate Prophet, but I came here to see where in the Quran does it challenge documented scientific fact. As I have shown you, a good job. You did try to produce one article. We can talk about what those lamps are, but that's really not germane to this topic tonight. And then he keeps going on about beautification. But remember what I told you. Science will never endorse what these people say. It will never say, oh, what? This is an adornment? Oh, heaven. This is their own opinions is what he's giving us. So that's why I'm pushing him to this challenge. Where is this contradiction with modern science? And then he talked about, Allah raised these invisible pillars or something like that. I wasn't exactly sure what he said, but we have already refuted that. We have shown from the Irish Times that science is in complete harmony with miracle arguments about God coming into this universe and doing things over there, doing whatever it is. So the whole thing about the definition about science, well, what is the definition about science? Again, we can have that discussion, but maybe we could do it at a later time. But I'm going to challenge you again. In fact, Aaron, how much time do I have? Aaron?
1 minute.
Okay, good. So once again, I'm going to take you right back to the document. Your first attempt failed in trying to show any documented scientific fact which contradicts the Quran. And so I'm going to ask you again for a second time to come up and to try again to try to show a contradiction with modern science. Your question about the Bible not being relevant, I was only bringing that up to show you what is an example of a logical contradiction between a book and the core and modern science. And so that's just for an example here. So having said that, I want to give you a second opportunity to try to show a contradiction with science, and please bring forth that documented evidence which we could have a look at it. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so now we're going to be doing 3-minute back and forths. And they set it up that we would be doing these 5 times each. So I guess we're going to be doing 3 minutes for Apostate Prophet to how are we doing the back and forth, the 3-minute back? So is Apostate Prophet going to query Nadir for 3 minutes, and then Nadir will query Apostate Prophet for?
I guess we could just go ahead with I can speak for 3 minutes, he can speak for 3 minutes, I can speak for 3 minutes.
Let's do that then. All right, and go.
Okay, so I was trying to find another Duxter's Science for Kids article about space, but I don't have enough time right now, so I couldn't really look into that. I couldn't really find that.
You could,
but I was also looking for one that describes the formation of stars and the Earth. But as I said, if you want to learn more about this stuff and how it contradicts with the Quran, you can always feel free to go on duxters.com, and they will describe very easily for kids to understand science, how the Earth was formed, how the stars were formed, and how the Quran contradicts with science for kids. That said, I would like to address the first the point about lamps again. Nadir Ahmed seems to, for some reason, avoid answering the question, but I ask again, this is entirely relevant to the discussion. What are the lamps? Nadir Ahmed, please answer this question in your own time. But what exactly are the lamps which the Quran describes? Because we need an answer to this question. If we don't have an answer to this question, then this only points at a scientific mistake in the Quran. Argument number two, I would like to share my screen here very briefly, concerns the mountains which were placed into the sky. I will quickly share my screen here on the side. I will put up this Quran verse, if somebody can put this on the screen. It says here, let's read Sahih International. This is Quran chapter 31, verse 10. It says, He created the heavens without pillars. We don't need a document for that. We clearly know that the sky was not this object that was raised without pillars that you see. And He has cast into the earth firmly set mountains. He has cast into the earth firmly set mountains, lest it shift with you. What needs to be clarified here is that it doesn't matter how long this process took. This is Quran chapter 31, verse 10. It doesn't matter how long this process took. What matters is whether this did or did not happen. And we know that the earth is a formation of rocks that came into existence over a long period of time, where the formation of hills, of elevation and sinking is entirely normal. There is no placing of mountains into this planet so that it does not shake, which also, by the way, is a scientific error, which I didn't even go into. Mountains don't prevent earthquakes, don't prevent shaking. That is a complete nonsensical statement in the Quran. And if we argued about that, that would be fantastic. But I don't want to go into that. That would be too long. And finally, again, about Nadir Ahmed's misunderstanding of science. As said, Nadir Ahmed keeps quoting this science article, which says that science does not make any statement about God, which according to Nadir Ahmed, means that science agrees that God could be in play. This is a complete misunderstanding and misrepresentation of what this statement is actually about. The statement merely says that science concerns itself with facts about the natural world and doesn't get involved in science, does not acknowledge science. Thank you.
All right, Nadir, your 3 minutes.
Okay, and also, if you notice, he brought up a lot of arguments, things like about the sun stopping, and I think he brought up so many, the sun cannot overtake, eclipse, and all that. Please keep in mind, if I am not addressing those, it's only because a matter of time constraints. There's only so much I can actually answer in this short period of time. So I hope we can get to all of these things. So what we have seen is a second fail on the part of apostate prophet. He is not able to present any documented evidence from scientific facts. He then began to talk about, well, he didn't like the explanation about, really, he's at this point, I feel like he's incoherent. He's in what is known as an obfusification stage, which is a kind of where he's now trying to confuse things. But let it show for the record, and I will say this again, science will never endorse the things these people say. For example, he said the earth is a formation of rocks. There is no placing of mountains in this. This is pseudoscience. Let me give you an example let me go ahead, and as you can see, he brought no reference to you for this. So let me go ahead and kind of restate my initial argument over here, and so we can understand what is pseudoscience. I said there is no explicit statement in the Quran which contradicts documented scientific fact. And as we can see, this is a victorious argument which is slowly beginning to foment here, which are found in books, periodicals, journals, or any reputable source online source. Now, this is very important. The documented scientific fact coming from apostate prophet must not be tampered with or contain any personal analysis or personal deductions. Like, this will never happen. Mountains can never be cast in the ground of the scientific data. Rather, all the discoveries which apostate prophet has made and findings or personal analysis must be submitted as a white paper to be peer-reviewed and embraced by the scientific community, so that we can then embrace it as science. So again, now I'm not saying that your personal analysis or your personal deductions is off off topic. We can definitely talk about it, apostate prophet. But the question which I am challenging you is tonight is where is a contradiction between the Quran and documented scientific fact? Now, I only have 30 seconds over here, so let me go. Let me just go and click on what is what is pseudoscience, because most of what he's actually presenting to you from a scientific perspective is actually pseudoscience. Sorry about all that background noise. In fact, I can't find it in my notes right now, but I'll tell you what. Am I time? Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to begin the second round. Apostate prophet, your turn.
Okay. Sorry, I was muted. Unfortunately, we see again that for some reason, I don't know, Nadir Ahmed before the debate said that he would like to apologize to me in public for for the way he conducted himself last time. He would like to publicly apologize and go forward in a very respectful and nice manner. I don't know why he keeps telling me that I'm basically destroyed. I didn't do anything. I'm engaging in pseudoscience. I'm already defeated and this and that. I don't know why what these personal things are all about. But I would like to say I still haven't gotten an answer to the very crucial question which I asked from the very beginning. So I will ask it again. Nadir Ahmed seems to be avoiding this question for some reason. What exactly are the lamps? When the Quran describes that there are lamps with which Allah beautifies the nearest sky, and these lamps are also thrown at rebellious devils. What exactly are these lamps? Please, Nadir Ahmed, in your own time, answer this question. What are the lamps? Number two, he still talks about the formation of mountains while completely avoiding the fact that the Quran describes the mountains as objects which were placed into the earth, which is simply wrong. In fact, if you want me to cite even more and beat a dead horse, I would like to add Quran chapter 78 verse 6 and 7, in which the Quran says, have we not made the earth a resting place or a bed, and the mountains as pegs? The mountains as pegs, as objects, as stakes. So still no progress in that regard. Nadir Ahmed is still strawmanning the point about science, that scientists apparently acknowledge that that God's stuff could be in play, and that they actually acknowledge and respect God. Such a thing is not the case. Science simply does not have any assertions, any business in God. Science does not concern itself with God. It concerns itself with the natural world. And Nadir Ahmed, for some reason, keeps misunderstanding this point. Other than that, he keeps asking me for documentation that the things that I presented in the Quran do indeed contradict science. But again, why would I mean, it's really ridiculous to present documents that the sky was not raised up with invisible pillars, that the sun does not move to a resting place, and the moon follows the sun, and all that stuff. This does not require documents. I feel like that whole attempt, that whole approach is a complete waste of time. I feel like Nadir is talking, like beating around the bush here, and avoiding the very obvious. And I don't want to engage in these personal attacks and personal remarks, but just a remark aside. I would like to, I don't know how much time I have, but I would like to concede the rest of my time. Yeah.
So
okay,
that's about it. Yeah. And let me reset that. Nadir, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, Apostate, I think, I do apologize. I was a little bit condescending with you last year. I don't know what came over me. So definitely, I apologize to you. When I didn't say that you're being defeated tonight or any of that kind of talk. What I'm saying is that there is a argument which is slowly fomenting to become a victorious argument, and that is, and I think you're conceding to the fact tonight that that there is nothing in documented in journals or periodicals from the scientific community which contradicts modern science. You are right. I'm running away from the lamps issue. That's because you've thrown so much at me. I'm trying to play catch up, so I'm prioritizing what could be the most important thing for me to talk about. So yeah, actually a lot of what you presented tonight, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to address that. So I will take lamps and I'm going to push it off to the side again, because I think there are more higher priorities which I need to address first. So yes, there is so yes, I am avoiding that, but I think it's for a good reason. Now, you see, I think he has conceded tonight that he will not be able to produce the necessary documentation. And when I did talk about pseudoscience, I'm sorry, I forgot to define what that was. So pseudoscience is basically, what's it called? Something, people are giving you scientific facts which have not been peer reviewed. And pseudoscience often focuses on some type of ideological agenda, like trying to find scientific errors in the Quran. This is exactly what we see over here. So, Apostate, please don't take this as a personal attack, but unless you bring us something which is peer-reviewed from the scientific community, that's the only thing we're willing to work with. So he did say, look, I can't produce for you documented scientific facts because the whole issue about the sun and the moon, following, or the moon following the sun, why would science even write anything about that? Well, I think I did show you many examples in the Quran where it talked about where the Quran agreed with modern science. So if I can show you things where it agrees, surely you can produce a documentation showing me that it disagrees. Okay, so here's what so if we look at the Quran from what it said, the moon follows the sun. This is scientifically correct because the sun goes in an orbit around the Milky Way. The sun and the earth, the earth and the moon all follow the sun. Read the article over here. Does the sun follow the same path across the sky as the sun? That's just one example, but they even showed it. And then here's another, reference, which I'll show you. Always when the moon comes after the sun, which is very similar to the Quran. So look, unfortunately my time is up, so if I can show you things which can agree with science of the Quran, why can you not show me in the Quran where it disagrees? So I will press you on that tonight. Go ahead.
All right. So now we begin the next round for Apostate Prophet. You begin your 3 minutes.
Sure. Okay, I would like to simply then refer people to. I don't. It's kind of weird that Nadir Ahmed keeps asking me to present him a scientific source which shows that the sun does not go to a resting place, for example. But here, I have one article up, which is from phys.org from November 24th, 2014. The article is titled "Earth's Orbit Around the Sun" by Matt Williams, taken from Universe Today, which basically clearly describes that the sun revolves around that the Earth revolves around the sun, and our moon revolves around us, around the Earth. And just like our Earth, just like our planet, many other planets in our solar system revolve around the sun. So this would be a scientific perspective, a scientific article, which clearly shows to us that the sun does not go anywhere, that we revolve around the sun. The sun moves in around the center of the galaxy, but that is entirely irrelevant to this discussion. It moves over, I don't know, I don't even have the figures in mind, millions of years until it orbits the center of the galaxy. That is entirely irrelevant to this discussion. The point is that the Quran clearly says that in chapter 36, verse 38, and the sun runs towards its resting place. And that is the determination of the mighty, the all-knowing. So the Quran describes the sun as running toward a resting place. In fact, I want to do Nadir Ahmed a favor here and give him a little gift, which is a hadith. Hadiths are reports about things that Muhammad said. These are very important in Islamic religion and tradition. Sahih Bukhari, chapter 4, verse 54, Sahih Bukhari 454, Hadith 421. Here, Muhammad asks his companion where the sun goes, or if he knows where the sun goes. His companion says, Allah and his apostle know better. Muhammad then says, it goes until it prostrates itself under the throne of Allah and takes the permission to rise again. And it is permitted, and then it will be about to prostrate itself, but its prostration will not be accepted in a future. And it will ask permission to go on its course, but it will not be permitted. But it will be ordered to return whence it has come, so it will rise in the west. That is the interpretation of the statement of Allah, and the sun runs toward its resting place in Quran 36, verse 38. So this hadith references this Quran verse, and Muhammad clearly says that the sun goes somewhere at night, and that one day it will come back from that direction, which is why it will rise in the west. Clearly the sun goes somewhere at night, and this contradicts science. Finally, again, I want to ask Nadir Ahmed, please answer the question. What exactly are the lamps with which Allah beautified the sky and which are thrown as missiles at rebellious devils? Thank you.
All right, and that's time. And now, Nadir, begin your 3 minutes, please.
Sure. So, again, going back to the lamps, I'm going to push it off to the side because you raised more. You threw a lot at me. So I have to first, prioritize all the arguments. At least 50% of the stuff that you have raised tonight, I did not get an opportunity to basically answer that. But let me finish real quick the whole thing about the follows over here. So he was he made some vague reference, and I didn't really understand what he was trying to quote from some document. But notice he didn't post it over here. Why? Because if you were to take the two statements, like, let me go ahead and I'm going to erase this because this one failed, right? This did not work, the whole thing about the mountain. So we'll erase that, unless you have objections to that. But okay, so now he's talking about something about follow. Good. That's where I want you to, I want you to build this document, okay? And I want you to basically, exactly like how I showed you my document, where you've got the verse and the scientific fact. So you've got something about a follow. I definitely want to kind of go with you on that and see where that takes us. So the Earth is on a wild ride through our Milky Way. So the Earth is basically traveling along with the sun and is going through, through the, what's it called, the Milky Way galaxy, along with the actual sun. So if you say that the moon is following the sun, that's actually scientifically correct. And that's why you will not find anything from documented scientific evidence to contradict that. But at the same time, we got to be honest here. Is the Quran really talking about this scientific phenomenon? No. Really, what it is, again, it goes back to an issue of something being open for interpretation. There's two interpretations here. When it talks about the sun, the moon following the sun, of course, this is talking about, from our perspective, that you look up in the sky, first comes the sun, then comes the moon. So as we can see here, his argument does not make sense and does not work over here, because this is something which has two interpretations. And so what does the scientific world say about this open for interpretation stuff? Basically, what they say is that if something is open for interpretation, then it can be challenged. In fact, I can't find my statement over here. So again, I want to take it back to, because I know we're running out of time here, to the challenge here, because I think this is very important here. If I can get my little thing on interpretation. Okay, here we go. What does the science say about something which is things which are circumstantial evidence, which is subject to interpretation, can be challenged? Science says that it cannot be left open for interpretation. So these vague references, if we were to apply the scientific methodology to them, they don't make any sense. So let's get back to the challenge. I'm going to make this right here for you. Go ahead.
Time. All
okay.
Right. Apostate Prophet, this is the fourth round.
Okay, I would like to share my screen at some point. Let me share my screen if I can do that quickly. Give me a second. Okay. And here it is. So the first argument, again, I can't believe I'm doing this, but since Nadir Ahmed asked for it, I would like to analyze this further. Quran chapter 36, verse 38 says, "And the sun runs towards its stopping point," or more literally, towards its fixed resting place. Arbery is always a translation that will present the Quran more literally. This Quran verse, chapter 91, verse 1, says, "By the sun and its brightness." And then number 2, it says, "And the moon when it follows it." So read these together. By the sun and its brightness, and the moon when it follows it. So when the moon follows the sun. And finally, I want to bring up this. Now, Nadir Ahmed said that this is just from our perspective. This simply describes how when we look at the sky, we see that the moon is following the sun. But just exactly because of that, for that reason, I showed a different Quran verse at the very beginning, or I talked about it at the very beginning. And here I would like to show it to make this clear. Quran chapter 36, verse 440, says, "It is not allowable for the sun and the moon it's not allowable for the sun to reach the moon, nor does the night overtake the day, but each in an orbit is swimming. This Quran verse clearly shows to us that the Quran is not being figurative and is not simply describing the sun and the moon following each other from our perspective, because the Quran also says here that the sun and the moon cannot reach each other. If the Quran now describes the sun and the moon chasing each other from our perspective, then this Quran verse would not make any sense, because we clearly know that during an eclipse, for example, the moon does reach the sun in the sky, which is why the moon gets in front of the sun, and we can therefore not clearly see the sun, for example. Like, we have a distorted view of the sun. We don't have an entire view of the sun. So this completely debunks Nadir Ahmed's claim that the Quran is merely referring to our point of view when it describes the sun following the moon and the moon following the sun. And as a scientific document here, look, phys.org, November 24, 2014, a document about a website about physics, a blog post from Universe Today, Earth's orbit around the sun, in which it clearly describes that all of that is not the case. Now, I would like to stop the screen sharing and reiterate the question to which we do not have an answer again. Dear Nadir Ahmed, please answer the question. What exactly is the lamp? What exactly are those lamps that the Quran describes when it says they are beautified and used as missiles? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to brush aside, put lamps to the side, because there's more important issues which we need to discuss. Like now you're talking about the stopping. Let me deal with stopping. Let me deal with eclipse. Well, and then, because again, you got to understand you're throwing a lot at me over here. So let me address one by one. So I think the challenge has been met as far as from the Islamic side. I think, pretty much has given up on trying to find trying to show something from documented scientific facts where it creates a contradiction, like what we saw with a mustard seed and the virginity test, and Galen talking about where blood comes from. And so I guess that he has surrendered and he's given up. He's not going to pursue that challenge anymore. And this is what I set out to basically prove to you tonight, that there is nothing from scientific documentation which contradicts modern science. Now, let me get very quickly to the thing about stopping. Sorry, I know you guys have been waiting for a long time for me to get there. Okay, so nowhere in the Quran does it say anything about the sun stopping. Okay, this is a word for stop inside the Quran, qif, as you can see, and you can also see it on a stopping. All right, rather what he is quoting is a word which is mustaqar. Now, mustaqar is a word which has many meanings. And so the first mistake which Apostate Prophet is doing here is that he is cherry picking his translations. Okay, he showed us, well, it says stop inside in the translations, but yes, you have to also understand that in front of you today, I have over 60 English translations of the Quran. Do you know how many translations actually quoted it as stop? 5 out of the 60. They all quoted it to mean different things. But even if it did talk about the sun stopping, does that contradict science? Well, I personally did some research on this. I found nothing in terms from the documented scientific journals which talked about that we know enough about the the orbit of the sun or the sun to know whether it rests, stops, or whatever. We just don't have that information in front of us. So the whole point is mute. But anyways, he's misrepresenting the Quran, because it not only did he cherry pick the translation, but even when we look in the Quran, this word mustaqar has many meanings all throughout the Quran. For example, a resting place, a period determined, a term appointed, a fixed course, and then a fixed resting place. And then finally we get to the main, and these are all the verses, I'm sorry, I did not show you. Then finally we get to the main refutation, which actually comes from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, in which he defines what this word mustaqar means inside this hadith. It talks about where the sun goes to worship God and travels, and it says over here, as you can see on my screen, وَذَلِكَ مُسْتَقَرْ لَهَا. This is mustaqar. Thank you.
All right, so that begins the last round for this interactive. Apostate Prophet, resume.
Thank you. So I would like to first respond to the whole resting place circus, which is so I picked out the translations Sahih International and Arbery, which are the most widely. Arbery is the most literal, known as to be the most literal, and Sahih International is currently the most widely used translation on the internet. These are translations that were approved, certified. Other translations say the same. If I look into the Quran, I can find that in chapter 6, verse 67, the same word occurs as in chapter 6 verse 98, the same word again occurs as a dwelling place. In 7 verse 24, it again is called a place of settlement. In 11:6, it is again appearing as a dwelling place and a place of storage, and so on. So clearly the Quran is describing a stopping place where the sun goes. Now, I really wonder, I mean, Nadir Ahmed said that in the hadith, which Muhammad speaks, we are not speaking of a resting place, but rather a place where the sun goes to worship Allah under his throne. That is also a very interesting thing. I mean, I would say that maybe the sun goes to a place where it rests and where it also worships Allah. That's what the sun does when it is tired at night. And I really wonder whether Nadir Ahmed really believes in that. Finally, I would like to ask again, dear Nadir Ahmed, what exactly are the lamps in the Quran when it describes that there are lamps in the sky which are beautified in the nearest heaven and also used as missiles thrown at rebellious devils? What are those lamps? Everyone is waiting for the answers to this. Finally, I would like to say that Nadir Ahmed has today admitted that he has no answers and he has been completely defeated. He couldn't answer the question on the mountains and this and that. Just kidding. I'm gonna do that. I'm not that kind. But yeah. So unfortunately, Nadir Ahmed has been unable to answer these questions. He's basically dismissing everything that I'm saying as my inability to present proof, which is simply ridiculous. So please, Nadir Ahmed, what exactly are the lamps? Thank you.
All right, Nadir. This is the last one.
Okay, so yeah, so as you can see, I've been ducking this whole thing about lamps, throwing it aside. Why? Because there's nothing inside science, in documented scientific evidence, which it contradicts. But he wants an information because according to him, he doesn't like it. That's why I've been throwing it low on the order of priorities, because he's blasted me with so many points. The more important things are the things which could which could contradict science in any way. So yes, so lamps could be any kind of celestial bodies. You've got satellites, you've got planets, you've got comets, you've got meteors. It can be a whole wide range of things which it can be. But I want to go back to the issue about resting place, because I think there should be no debate on this topic. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has clearly defined what this resting, this word mustaqar, which we find in the Quran. And that is that this is where basically how the sun travels to worship God. But notice what you will never find in the Quran, I'm sorry, let me go back to this hadith. Prophet Muhammad did not translate it or say this is a stopping place of the sun, as Apostate prophet is quoting. Remember, he has been refuted because I showed you 60 translations of the Quran. 5 out of them only translated it stopping. So he cherry picked. The Quran, this word mustaqar is used all throughout the Quran. But guess what it doesn't mean? Stopping, which is what Apostate prophet presented to us. So his argument doesn't make sense. And so I think it's very, I wonder now, and now he talked about the eclipse. Let me address that. You see, the eclipse is basically where you're sitting here on Earth, the moon gets in front of you and the sun. It's between you and the sun. Now, let me ask Apostate Prophet a question and just take 10 seconds of my time. Does the Quran explicitly state that the moon cannot get in between me and the sun? Does the Quran explicitly state that? Answer. Take 10 seconds of my time to answer yes or no to that.
No, I don't think that's necessary and relevant.
Okay, because I can tell you it does not. And so what you're doing here is you're using some kind of very vague and ambiguous language to try to make a case. And this violates the law of Ridwan. Listen, apostate prophet. This is going to address almost all your claims here. The law of the Ridwan is a person just like apostate prophet. He tries to refute Islam and things like that. Listen to what he says. The problems is making a very precise scientific claims based on language. One must have to produce very precise language to support it. Now, when you talk about the sun is going to mustaqar, resting place, and it's overtaking, is this precise language? Now, notice he did back away from that. Said, if the Quran says that the moon cannot get in between me and the sun, wallahi, the Quran is wrong. But
that
that's
was time.
not what the Quran says. All right?
That was time. All right, so now we're moving into, this would be the 5-minute closing for each of you.
Mm-hmm.
Apostate Prophet, begin your 5 minute, please.
Okay, I would like to share my screen here quickly. If I can start the thing now. Okay, just a second. Okay. Here is my screen. I want to get back to the one question that I have been asking from the very beginning. I have shared my screen. If you can put that on the screen, I would appreciate it very much. Yep. So here we have Quran chapter 67, verse 5. This is the question that I have been asking from the very beginning, which Nadir Ahmed still, for some reason, has not answered, which he refuses to answer, which I find very sad. I think this makes his case in front of everybody here very, very, very bad. It says, the Quran says here, and we have certainly beautified the nearest heaven with stars. It doesn't actually say stars. It says literally lamps. So we have certainly beautified the nearest heaven with lamps, because Islamic scholars were clear that this must be stars, because it can't make sense in any other regard. They usually put stars here. With stars. And we have made from them what is thrown at rebellious devils, or at the devils, and have prepared for them the punishment of the blaze. So the Quran describes here in chapter 67, verse 5, and also, by the way, in different forms in other verses, I believe in 2 more verses, that Allah placed lamps into the nearest heaven, or literally the heaven of the earth, sama dunya in Arabic. Lamps, he beautified this heaven with lamps, and those lamps are also thrown at rebellious devils. It is very clear that people back then thought that stars are these objects that are in the sky. They beautify the sky, and they are also occasionally thrown at rebellious devils. In fact, we have a hadith in which Muhammad very clearly describes that shooting stars, which we falsely call shooting stars, they are meteors. These are stones that enter our atmosphere and thereby burn up, looking like stars to us. That these shooting stars are actually stars thrown at rebellious devils. Unfortunately, Nadir Ahmed has been unable to answer what these lamps here are, if they are not stars. This is because Nadir Ahmed cannot answer this question, because this question here directly, absolutely disproves the Quran's truth claim. Finally, I want to read this Quran verse again, Quran chapter 13, verse 2, in which this actually describes the universe very well from an Islamic point of view. It says, "It is Allah who erected the heavens without pillars that you can see. He established himself above the throne and made subject the sun and the moon, each running its course for a specified term. He arranges each matter. He details the sign that you may of the meeting with your Lord be certain." So here we have a picture of the sky, of the world around us. We see that Allah raises this sky above our flat earth, which is a bed, and he then puts himself above the sky on his throne, and the sun and the moon are down there, subject to his order, running and chasing each other, as mentioned in different Quran verses. And this is basically the picture of the cosmos that we have, which is a very ignorant picture of the cosmos. And I don't believe that in the 21st century, I should be required to present proof that this contradicts science. I could present proof, and I did present proof earlier, that this contradicts some basic physics articles, for example. And if those are not accepted, then I simply do not know how to further proceed from here. As we can see, the Quran was produced in a time where people were extremely ignorant and unaware of what the world looks like. Sorry, in a time and environment in 7th century Arabia, where people were extremely ignorant of what the world looked like. We also see that the Arabs and the Muslims learned only almost 1,000 years after they after they adopted Islam, they learned more about the sun and the earth. The Quran didn't give them the right answers, which is why they depended on astronomers and finally on Western scientists to tell them the truth about the universe, about the solar system and the earth. And I want to say, I guess Nadir Ahmed wants to depart from here claiming that I have lost, I have defeated myself, I have been unable to answer him and this and that. I mean, everybody sees very clear what has happened here and what will happen here when we discuss science. But if Nadir Ahmed wants to have it, so I would like to say, hey, I would like to do Nadir Ahmed a favor here and would say, I have lost today's debate, and Nadir Ahmed has indeed won today's debate if he wants to believe so, and I congratulate him for that. I certainly don't agree with it personally. Thank you. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted again. So Nadir, your closing 5 minutes, please.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Peter, can you put up a shared screen?
Yeah, can you guys see my screen?
I do not. Yeah, it's not here.
Okay, hold on, guys. I'm sorry. Let me try this again. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Share.
I'll stop the time.
Thanks. Just give me 1 second. I'm having a little technical difficulty. It's not seeing my screen. 1 second. I'm almost, I think I got this fixed here.
All right.
Here we go. All right. So thank you for that very interesting discussion. And, you know, he's right. There's a lot of stuff which I did not address. That's because I was juggling a lot of different things and a lot of different issues. So what we have, as I stated in the very beginning, there is no explicit statement in the Quran which contradicts documented scientific fact. Let us look at the apostate prophet's document, which I presented to him. He did try in the beginning, but as you could saw, that whole thing about mountains being thrown down, you know, this is all in complete harmony with modern science. So he tried something with a little bit of follow, but as we can see, there you go. That's the winning argument right there in front of you. Go ahead and look at your screen. He was not able to show anything from science today which contradicts from the scientific documentation, that is. A lot of things which he raised, yeah, I did not answer. Just don't have the time. Please, you know, bring about 4 arguments at a time, then I will probably be able to answer that. Okay, second thing, I said tonight, everything I presented to you will be based upon documented fact. And that is exactly what we saw here today. If my presentation did not appear to you due to some technical difficulties, email me, I'll get you that document. I quoted academic journals and scholarship and journals from which is respected by the scientific community. And number 3, I said, nothing my opponent will present will be based upon scientific fact, documented facts from the journals and what we have from academia. And that is exactly what we see here. Look, let's take a look again. For those who don't believe me, there you go. There's his document. Nothing. That is because the Quran is in complete harmony with modern science. And you know, also another thing I want to bring up, look, we can find scientific errors with other books. Like, for example, the Bible. You can find it with Galen's work. All these books, look, you can, this took me 2 minutes to produce, literally. Each one took me 2 minutes. Apostate Prophet was up here for almost an hour, and he was not able to present anything from science which contradicts the Quran. Now, that raises a very interesting question tonight. What is it different? I mean, seriously, let's go through we saw from Romans, I'm sorry, from the Galen, how it contradicted science. The Bible contradicted science on the small seeds, you know, mustard seed being the small seed, the virginity test, and the list goes on. And that raises a very interesting question tonight. What is it about the Quran that you cannot find anything inside from the scientific journals or anything to contradict it? That is a very interesting question. There is something different about the Quran. Most of what he was trying to present as scientific errors was his understanding. He chooses to understand the Quran in this manner. Again, how much I didn't have time to go with him and challenge and show how he's showing he's interpreting the Quran to be wrong. Just didn't have the time for that. But I thought that was kind of irrelevant because we really need to go and look at the journals. What is in our academic journals? What is there which contradicts modern science? So this raises a very interesting question. And that is the Quran a scientific miracle? Now, this is a long-awaited, long overdue debate, which should have happened last year. I know many people from the Aaron Ra show have expressed interest in it. So one question, I want you to take 10 seconds of my time, Apostate. Will you debate me on, is the Quran a scientific miracle? Would you like to debate this next?
Yes.
Awesome, great. We'll set that up. And then let me give you really the winner of the debate. The winner of the debate is Hassan Ridwan, right here. This guy, he just blew it away. He said, the law of Ridwan. Now, this is a person who Apostate Prophet respects greatly. He said the problem was making very precise scientific claims based on language. One must have to produce very precise language to support it. When you say, okay, the sun goes to its resting place, the sun follows and gets into all of these things, this is not the explicit language which we're looking for. In fact, let's go down and see what he is saying. The dwelling place, and most of what he has said is really vague and ambiguous. And we challenged him. If the Quran says that the moon can't get between us and the sun, that's clearly wrong. But he was not able to show any explicit verse in the Quran. So, my time is almost up here, and I think I do want to circle back to the issue. Oh, I'm sorry. He said something about land.
That's time.
The time. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so now we're going to do the Q&A from the audience, and I believe Landra has a list of questions for us, and let me see if I can go through. This is quite a long list. I'm going to try to figure out which ones are questions because there's some other comments in here as well. All right, so here's a question. Cheap Philosophy says, what verses of the Quran are used in any scientific discipline? And I'm going to assume that unless otherwise specified, each of these questions can be answered by both of you. Once again, what verses of the Quran are used in any scientific discipline?
I mean, as valid source, none at all, ever. So.
Okay, can I answer that question? Or
Certainly.
Okay, yeah. So basically, the scholars, or you can look inside the academia, the Quran is mentioned in a recent study on fetal alcohol syndrome. And what they did a research on this, and what they found were that Muslim women were, or I think 50 times less likely to give birth to a fetal alcohol child. Now, they credit this to basically the teachings of the Quran. And so let me see, I got the study right here in front of you. And so this is, I'm sorry, this is not the right one.
Can you reference a verse?
Oh, that's chapter 5, verse 90, in which it talks about the alcohol, any type of alcoholic beverage is forbidden. So basically, look, and can you guys see my screen here? It says over here, actually, the first study on fetal alcohol syndrome, it said the Islamic faith promotes abstinence from alcohol, and abstinence is high among Muslim women. Then it goes on to say that Muslim women are 50 times lower than the global average in the worldwide organization to basically give birth to a child suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome. So this is a great compliment which was given to the Quran. This is just one. I can give you many examples where academics and scientists have referenced the Quran.
All right.
I mean, if I say people, please don't drink alcohol, I can't be referenced as a scientific source, which to solidify the scientific claim that alcohol has bad impacts, which is why I am a credible scientific miraculous source for the world. I mean, that's not really how it works.
Okay. So the next question, this is from Doc Savage. Did the moon ever split asunder that we know of?
I would like to answer the question. I made some videos about that, in which I documented that this never happened, despite some Muslims occasionally making certain claims that this did happen and that there are records. They present one record to which we don't actually attach any source. So I cannot document anything about this because there is no document. There is no document in human history ever which tells us that the moon was split in two. And this actually disproves the Quran, because if the moon was split in two in the 7th century, we would have records of it from different civilizations, from different cultures. In the 7th century, people were quite advanced and took records, were constantly observing the sky. A recent Muslim apologist very funnily said that we have no records because people were asleep at night. But of course, that is a very strange deflection from the topic. We have no source, and it clearly did not happen.
Okay, so I'm sorry, were you done?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what Apostate Prophet is presenting to you is a pseudoscientific principles. Here is a journal, which if you can see on your screen over here, here is an article in which the moon, someone in a book claimed 900 years ago that the moon completely vanished from the sky. Okay. And so so the scientists actually began to research this, but here's what's very important. Why didn't they ask what Apostate Prophet is asking? Oh, where did anybody else see it in the world? No, they went and researched this. So this is this is a fallacy which is known as an argument from silence. Listen here what an argument from silence is. This fallacy of reasoning states that if a record, I'm sorry, I'm hearing something on my end here.
Sorry.
This fallacy of reasoning states that if a record of an event cannot be found, then that event did not occur. This argument is erroneous because an event could have happened even if no record of it could be found. In other words, lack of record does not disprove an event. So here's my point. If you try to these arguments with other people, they're going to shut you down. They're going to refute you. But I think the most important thing here is a pseudoscientific principle which Apostate Prophet has brought that, oh, nobody else has saw it in this world, therefore it can't be true. This article from academia disproves and debunks that. Thank you.
So just to be clear, you're saying that the moon could have been broken into, which the Quran says this was done as a demonstration for people to view. Mm-hmm. But we can't prove that it didn't happen just because nobody saw it happen, even though there's only one moon.
Well, what we are saying is to say that it didn't happen because nobody else saw it. This is a pseudoscientific principle. That means nothing. It's an argument from silence. Can we prove it? Can we disprove it? No, we can't. Tonight, I've come here tonight to talk about why the Quran contradicts modern science. And this story does not contradict science. Do you disagree with that, Aaron? You brought it up.
Again, I mentioned it only because the Quran said that it was done as a demonstration.
What about you, Apostate? Are you saying the story contradicts science?
I think you're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yes, I am. I think it contradicts science.
Okay, what scientific principle? What document? What scientific principle are you talking about?
Well, I think it contradicts. I mean, it contradicts science because it makes a claim that we have absolutely no proof for, which we should normally have proof for. Okay. I'm not sure if there is a in the scientific language a term to describe this complete lack of proof of something very obvious.
I think the discrepancy here is that he's saying that you can make statements in religion that just because you can't prove it happened doesn't mean it didn't happen. That's common for religion to say.
Okay.
But in science, you can't say that something did happen unless there's evidence to show that it did. So it's completely different.
Where did you get that principle from? Where can I read this? Remember, I came tonight with documentation to support everything I said, and I expect the same from you, Aaron, and the same from Apostate Prophet. Where are you getting this from? That's pseudoscience.
Where am I getting that from?
this principle that you got to
That
prove
all postulations must be based on prior evidence.
Okay. I'm saying
that would
science.
be middle school science, entry level, first day.
Okay. Well, okay. So what I'm telling you here, and I have something right here in front of you. Here is something which it says. I'll read it again. This is an argument from silence.
No, this is not an argument.
I would like to give you an example.
What you're not getting, Nadir, and I don't want to be dragged into this because I'm only the moderator.
Okay, that's
in
fine.
science, we cannot say that something is truth until we can show that it's true. We can't say that something is possible until we can show that there is a possibility, a precedent or parallel or verified phenomenon indicating that such possibility exists. We have to have a basis in evidence before we can say that anything happened. Right. So
I want to give you an example, if I may.
Can I respond? Let me respond to Aaron.
Okay, I would like to just give an example quickly, please.
Yeah, sure.
Let's say we have a source from the 12th century, or let's say we have a source from the 5th century, in which let's say Middle Eastern people, Hebrew people, the Jews, claim that a giant ball came from the sky, a ball as big as entire Mesopotamia, came down from the sky and bounced off the ground and went away again. A source could say this. If now in the 21st century we looked back and we clearly observed that no record of such a thing exists anywhere in the world, we would say this is nonsense. This is a nonsensical claim that somebody made up, because if such a thing did happen, we would definitely, most certainly have proof for that. The possibility that such proof does not exist, that there is no witness record of this, would be rather absurd. So insofar, I don't know if
can I respond to that?
There's another important point there. That go ahead and respond. And I'll address it.
So this is a pseudoscience of Aaron Ra, and it is a pseudoscience of Apostate Prophet. Now,
it is not a pseudoscience.
Please don't interrupt me.
You don't understand science doesn't make it a pseudoscience.
Okay.
We do not say. If you say, you can say that you believe. You can say that you believe that the moon broke in two, and we don't have to disprove you, because all you're talking about is a belief. But if you state it as a fact, then you have the burden of proof. You have to back it up. You have to show the evidence that it happened, or you're not allowed to say that it happened. It's a phrase called pictures or it didn't happen. Okay, so this is another relation to Hitchens' razor. So an unsupported assertion doesn't have to be disproved. It has to be verified before we can even discuss it. If there's no evidence that it happened, then we just assume that it didn't happen. We don't have to prove that it didn't happen. It's an unsupported assertion. They have no more credibility than a claim that has already been proven false, which means zero. Hitchens' razor is that that what is asserted without evidence may be dismissed without evidence. We don't have to prove that it didn't happen. All we need to acknowledge is there is no evidence that that happened. Done. Same thing as it didn't happen.
You let me talk? First you said I could talk, then you shut me up. That's fine. I mean, this is the way you want to conduct these debates. That's fine.
You were interrupting me to misrepresent me.
Okay, so you don't want to hear from me. All right.
Your mistake.
I think we shouldn't fight. We should just move on. Come on, let's just move on.
You don't want to hear from me. That's fine. I mean, you invited me to debate here, and now you're shutting me up. Okay.
I'm not shutting you up.
All right. All right.
Okay, I'm shutting you up. Come on, let's move on. Come on, please.
No, nobody's shutting you up.
You're not letting me talk.
You're not going to misrepresent me and expect me to just sit there and take it and pretend that that's really happening.
Yeah, all right.
So I'm sorry that you don't understand science and then you want to lie about me about it.
Okay.
So,
yeah, all right.
Okay. Next question.
I'd like to get to the next question. The dogs went off.
Sure.
All right. So for psychonaut skeptic, this is for a question for Nadir. How do we determine what is literal and what is metaphorical in the Quran?
So a big problem of tonight was, I think Apostate Prophet was referring to some vague references, and trying to say they contradict science. And really, I think Hassan Ridwan answered it very, very good over here. And this is, I think I called him the winner of tonight's debate, because he said the problem was making very precise scientific claims based on language. One must have to produce very precise language to support it. That we did not see tonight. And if you apply that to the whole thing about mustaqar, the whole thing about the lamps shooting. First of all, lamps need to be interpreted. So you see, this is not the type of precise language. And this is the hypocrisy of these people here. You see, when they want to refute our scientific miracle arguments, then they bring up this issue. Oh, this is not precise language. And I accept. Sometimes they're not. And we definitely say, okay, we gotta fix that argument. But notice how the hypocrisy in them. When they try to show scientific contradictions in the Quran, are they using precise language to support it? No. So, but like I said, I think the debate was clear that if you look at what's in the documentation of scientific journals, nothing contradicts modern science in the Quran. Go ahead.
Aaron, I would like to add a quick note. I think it would be appropriate, it would be best for all our sake and the viewers if we kept the limit to one response from me and one response from him if we want to respond at all to a question.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
Okay, so the next question there is from Psychonaut Skeptic. Says, I think you wait. That's let me read this. Make sure that this is a legitimate question. Question for Nadir: how do you interpret what is meant as literal positive statements versus what should be metaphorical?
Well, yeah, of course, there are metaphorical statements in the Quran, but what's very important here is we need to look at the precise wording of what Ridwan, like Hassan Ridwan suggested here. You know, we have to have a fair, what's we call equal balance, where the same standard you guys use, the same standard we use. Whatever is explicit. Like I'll give you an example. Apostate prophet said that the Quran is contradicting eclipses, but then I challenged him. Where does it explicitly say that the between me, the moon can't get between me and the sun? He says he was not able to meet that challenge. So he said there's a word like overtake. It is overtake. so obviously this is a type of vague and ambiguous type of language which we could just toss aside according to the law.
What's vague or ambiguous about the word overtake?
So if I want to say, hey, does
overtake not clearly and explicitly mean?
It says that
the other.
It says that the moon follows the sun in one verse, and then it says in a different verse that the sun and the moon can never overtake each other. If we now want to take the moon following the sun as metaphorical, simply describing that when we look at the sky, we see the moon following the sun, then it wouldn't make sense if the Quran also says that the moon and the sun can never overtake each other, because in that case, the Quran would be making an observation from our perspective, but then again contradicting that observation when it says that the moon and the sun cannot overtake each other on this course that they are running.
To me, there doesn't see. I don't see any ambiguity there.
Extremely clear. That is very.
I want to
clear.
get back to the question, because the question was how does Nadir interpret what is meant to be literal positive statements versus what we should see as metaphor? He said there must be a standard. I'm interested in hearing what that standard is.
Looking for the explicit word-for-word usage. In fact, the standard, really, I think I did give it over here. When I showed the contradictions between, like the Bible, for example. Now, notice what the standard is this. We showed explicit word-for-word contradiction without me providing some kind of deductions or personal analysis. Where was all that personal analysis when we came to looking at these contradictions? You can find these contradictions with all these other books, but you can't find it with the Quran without your personal analysis.
With the word overtake, there's nothing ambiguous about that. When it says that the mountains are cast,
you're not going to let me. Can I respond to that?
No, please.
Yeah. So
we should just let's keep the responses a little bit shorter. I mean, we're going into the same thing again and again.
I think what's happening. To be very honest with you, this is my interpretation. I know you guys are going to get mad, but I think the fact that you are not able to produce the necessary documentation from journals. Now you're kind of licking your wounds here. To be very honest with you, where now you're taking words like overtake and injecting science in it to make it mean what you want. So the thing is,
that's ridiculous. We should
you're not going to accuse us of dishonesty. While
you keep doing this, I could engage.
I'm going to move to another.
You guys want to shut me down?
I'm going to move to another question.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to skip that question. My wife wanted me to include one, but it's just insulting, so I'm not going to do it. Then we have. Let me see the next one. The next legitimate question. Wait, hold on a second. Okay. Question for Nadir. If by some miracle we emailed you a scientific document that contradicted a scientific claim made in the Quran, would you even accept it?
Well, sure, absolutely. I would add it to the list which you see on the screen over here. Yeah. We could do this if you want. We just scratched the surface of this topic. We can do it again. Like, for example, I didn't have time to really get into this whole logical deduction of how apostate prophet is looking at to follow and overtake. And to him, it doesn't make sense. I can get into that with him. But the reason why I really didn't go there with him, because I was focusing on the documentation. Where from the journals can we find a direct contradiction? That is not there in the Quran. Anybody can interpret the Quran in a malicious manner, and that's okay. I'm not saying he's a malicious person, but that's his job, to interpret the Quran in a malicious, nefarious way. That's okay. I understand that. But
you're accusing him of being nefarious.
No, I didn't say that. I'm saying you can interpret it in a malicious and nefarious way. Now, that's
you said that was his job.
Okay, I would like to respond when he's finished.
As a critic, that tends to be what you got to do, right? And so the problem is, again, Aaron, don't misrepresent me. I'm not saying he's a malicious, nefarious individual as a person, but sometimes you got to take on that role for the job which he's doing.
True.
Well, I would like to respond. I'm never nefarious in any criticism of anything that I've.
Oh my gosh, I'm not even going to challenge you because you're going to shut me up. I
would like to respond to that quickly.
Excuse me. When were you shut up?
Aaron, just let's not. We're going to fight forever. Let's just. Can I respond to that very quickly?
Nobody shut him up.
I know.
I don't want to talk to you, man.
I know.
Seriously, just keep it between me and Apostate.
I would like to respond simply by saying, actually, Nadir brought up a good point, which is also implied in the question. But there is actually a difference between how I approach this subject and how Nadir Ahmed approaches this subject. When we look at the scientific mistakes in the Quran and whether the Quran contains scientific errors or not, I can actually and do accept that the Quran might contain scientific statements that are accurate, that are in accordance with science, with the natural world as it truly is. Whereas Nadir Ahmed is entirely defiant and will never be able to accept that anything contradicts the Quran, because if it does contradict the Quran, then he will simply reinterpret it or call it a miracle. In fact, we see proof for that very clearly in his document, where he had from the very beginning typed down the idea that I will not be able to bring any document which contradicts science. How can you make such a prediction? How can you make such a sure prediction and from the very beginning say that you will be proven right and that you undoubtedly know this? That means you are completely close to the idea that you could be proven wrong.
When we get to the end of this, that we discuss your next upcoming debate, there needs to be a couple of definitions there, because you're going to describe whether the Quran is a scientific miracle. What would it even mean to be a scientific miracle? I think that needs to be hashed out before you plan out the next debate. But I want to get to the next question. What are the lamps? I knew I was going to see this one.
I would like to say I think I have a very nice name for tonight's debate. It should be called "The Silence of the Lamps." I think it would be a very nice title of the debate. But go ahead, Nadir.
Yeah, so as you saw, the whole night I was brushing it aside. Why? Because this does not contradict documented scientific fact. From a scientific point of view, that's perfectly fine to say that there's lamps in space. In fact, here's a NASA website in which they say stars explosive leaves behind a red rose. So according to NASA, there's roses in space. So this is my point that, look, the issue tonight, which I really focused on, I was focusing on the documentation, but without further ado, let me get into what lamps are. So lamps can be any kind of celestial body. It could be meteors, it could be comets, it can be satellite planets, it could be anything. So, but again, the whole issue is, does this verse contradict science? Absolutely not. Because we saw from the professor, he says, because this is dealing with a supernatural, a god throwing something at a demon. From the reference which I presented to you, they said science is silent on the supernatural. In no way is it denying it. So my point here is, this verse is in complete harmony with science from the reference which I have shown you.
Okay, well, as a moderator, I'm going to leave my opinion out of that and move on to the next question. So let's see. And there's a bunch of people that ask about the lamp. So I guess I should revisit one thing, that the Quran states that the sky is adorned with these stars, and so we know meteors do not adorn the sky. Meteors only exist for a few seconds where they're visible. But what is adorning the sky is actually, millions of miles wide, balls of flaming gas. And the Quran says that it is out of these that the angels make their projectiles for the devils. And I'm sure that that's where the description comes from. But I'm going to move on to the next question.
Can we do something? Can we have 5 minutes, if Nadir agrees to this? Can we have a 5-minute interrogation of, or a 3-minute interrogation of what these lamps are? I would like to reiterate my question and ask Nadir to.
If Nadir agrees to that, I will set the timer.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Let's do it. Yeah.
How many minutes?
5. You said 5.
Okay, yeah, 5. So I would like to ask the question again. We have asked the question again and again during the debate, and I would like to reiterate what the question exactly is. The Quran clearly says Allah has beautified the sky of the earth, Samar Dunya, also known as the nearest heaven in Islamic terms, with lamps. Allah has beautified the nearest heaven with lamps and made some of them as protection against rebellious devils who try to snatch information from Allah's high assembly. In the hadith, we see further that Muhammad described that exactly when they saw a movement of lights in the sky. So this seems to be referring to shooting stars. Now, if this is not stars according to you, what are those lamps? What are those lamps that beautify the sky and which are also used as missiles? Please answer the question.
Well, first, let's go to the Quran. Mike, before I answer you, I want you to answer me a question. This whole thing about God taking lamps and shooting at the devils. Can you accept this is a supernatural claim found in the Quran? Can you accept that?
I don't think that is an acceptable. There would be an acceptable response because the Quran clearly describes something that is visible to us, which is the Quran clearly says. Okay, the Quran clearly says lamps as beautified in the sky, and also thrown at rebellious devils as missiles. So what are those lamps? I'm just asking the question. What are the lamps?
Yeah. Okay, so you see, you've kind of backed away from the question because you know science is going to.
I have not. I'm asking the question.
Let me ask a clarifying question for you to help this. How do you define what is a supernatural versus a natural thing?
Right. When you see something in the Quran which talks about devils, heaven, hell, God doing something like this, and this is a supernatural claim. And as we see from the professor, Dr. William Revile, I'll read it again.
What are the lamps?
You guys are interrupting me, guys. Please let me.
What are the lamps?
I will get to that. I will get to that, please. So here again, I will say it again from the article, which you can see on your screen here, because science has nothing to say about the supernatural world, like about. An example would be what we're talking about, does not mean that it denies the supernatural. So from a scientific point of view, this story can never contradict any scientific fact, and it's a hoax. Now let me get back to what these.
Hold on, I've got to clarify then, because we are not talking about supernatural things. You said that these lamps that we're talking about are stars. You're not saying stars are supernatural, are you?
What are the lamps, Nadir?
Okay, the lamps can be any kind of celestial body. It could be meteorites. It can be comets. It can be asteroids. It could even be something we may not even know. So
those things are not supernatural, right?
You are saying these are not stars.
No, it's one of the many possibilities it could be. It's open for interpretation.
Okay, but the Quran says.
Can you guys let me talk?
Stars and meteors are not supernatural, right?
What's that?
Stars are not supernatural, right?
The issue about it being thrown at a devil is supernatural. And who's doing this? It is God who is hurling these at the devil.
Are you saying stars are thrown at devils?
Guys, hold on. Let me finish.
Okay, we're running out of time. You are deflecting a lot. Can you clarify this?
You guys are interrupting me like every 5 seconds. But anyway,
I shut the timer off. We're going to get this definition now. Okay. And then continue.
Yes, this is talking about a God who's taking lamps and hurling it at devil. This is a supernatural claim because you have God involved. You have a devil, which is the object of it being hit. So this is, and so there's no going about it. But what's very important to understand is when people looked up in the sky and they saw like a shooting, what we call today a shooting star, where you could see the streak go in the sky. The Quran is not talking about that. In fact, they asked Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about that. And if you like, I can share the hadith about what Muhammad said about this issue. Now, it's no longer talking about the Quran, but now we're getting into the Hadith.
What the Hadith is saying is that they were sitting together and they saw a meteor shower, or they saw stars moving, and he asked them what they used to say, and he then explained to them that these are missiles thrown at rebellious devils, and the Quran clearly describes them as lamps together with the stars in the sky, which beautify the nearest heaven. So these are clearly stars according to the Quran. What are they?
So I just want to clarify again. Let me
answer him
before I set the timer back. Nadir, you said that the stars referenced here can be any celestial item, and these include meteors, they include stars, they include whatever, asteroids or what have you, but these are not supernatural things. These are things we can see, right? You accept that we're talking about natural things right now, right?
It could even be something we are not aware of, because lamps is not defined in the Quran as being anything. Now, people have, of course, said it could be this, it could be stars, it could be meteors, but the Quran doesn't define it. So the point which I'm trying to make, again, Ridwan, I'm going to call my friend Hassan Ridwan. Look, what he said, you should use precise language, precise scientific language, and that you guys are not doing. You're trying to make
I would like you to use precise scientific language. Are stars the thing that we're talking about? Are stars supernatural?
Okay, so I think what's happening here, I'm going to answer your question. If you talk about lamps, well, if you talk about stars, no, those are not supernatural. But let me just explain to you, I think what I think is happening here. I think it all goes back to the lack of documentation to show where it contradicts the Quran. So now you're trying to get me to talk. So, hey, look, I can find him. I can make him contradict himself. So you're hoping you can get some kind of win.
We're not trying to get you. I'm just trying to get the answer out of your mouth.
But
the Quran says that Allah beautified the nearest heaven with lamps. Right. So it is describing something that beautifies the heaven of the earth, and also made of the missiles thrown at rebellious devils. To me, this is very clearly the stars. There is nothing else that beautifies the heaven.
All I need
what exactly are these lamps?
Yeah, all I need from Nadir is to say, are we talking about the stars? Are we talking about something in the sky, shooting stars, actual stars, things we can actually see? Or are we instead not using precise scientific language and instead referring to the ambiguous language of the Quran as being something supernatural instead?
So, what you're doing, you're going after these ambiguous verses which have already been debunked, because science will never even look at this, as I've shown you from the reference. Lamps can refer to anything. It could refer to stars, meteors.
Okay, so we're not going to use any precise language. We're going to say something can refer to anything.
Lamps is not a precise
thing away from
language.
precise language we can get.
Aaron, let me... lamps in the Quran verse clearly described are stars. We keep coming back to this again and again, but
where is this?
Everybody can clearly see that in, for example, Quran chapter 67 verse 5, it says, "And Allah has beautified the nearest heaven with lamps and made some of them as protection thrown at rebellious devils." From this is very clear what beautifies the sky. What describes that is stars. And are you saying that these stars could also be used as weapons against rebellious devils? Is that what you're saying? Are you saying the lamps are stars?
Okay, so here's what I'm saying, okay? This verse, which we have seen here tonight, is in 100% agreement, in complete harmony with modern science. There is no contradiction between this verse or anything from the scientific community. I think what the problem here is, you find this as ridiculous, you find this as preposterous, and so because of that, you are now raising this issue, but it's off topic, because what I came here to debate, where does the Quran contradict modern science? Now you want to get into a topic, well, I think this is silly, I think this is ridiculous. And that's fine,
I think we have our answer.
You got your answer, and that is in complete harmony with modern science. And if it contradicts, I challenge you to show me where it contradicts any scientific fact. That you cannot do.
Since we're not going to use precise scientific language in this case, there's no way to do that. So I'm going to move on to the next question. This is from Noxum Volpenhair. And let's see, is this a question? Let me read this first. It might not be.
Can we end the screen sharing?
Yes, go ahead.
Fine. There we go.
All right. So science methods for finding truth, the foundation of science. No, this is not. I'm sorry. This is a super chat, not a question. I have to skip that. Thank you, Noxum Volpenhair, but I can't read that as a question right now. All right, so I'm looking for the next clear question. There's a lot of comments. lot of super chats. I want to thank everybody for those, but I can't highlight them during the debate. My apologies. Here's a question. According to the Quran, a baby's gender is determined by which parent climaxed first. Is that scientifically proven?
That is not indeed part of the Quran. That is part of the Hadith, which are reports of what Muhammad said. In a report, Muhammad said something that translates to that. Made also similar claims, such as that the baby's gender is determined after a while, after the bones and the flesh come together and all that. But that is not part of the Quran. It is part of Muhammad's statements, which is a scientifically false statement, but not part of the
Nadir,
Quran.
would you agree that we should not refer to hadiths as Quranic statements?
So, the thing is, we're kind of, here's what I'm seeing what's happening. And this is why people are going to the hadith. And I don't have a problem debating the hadith, but what's happening here is because you are not able to find clear scientific contradictions between the Quran and science. Now we're going to go into the hadith. Maybe I can score over there. Maybe I can make my case over there. But here's my point. If you have to go to the hadith, then you're already conceding the fact that, hey, you know what? I cannot find a scientific error with the Quran which contradicts science.
Nadir,
So I'm saying let's keep this in the Quran and let's not go to the hadith.
So I asked you a yes or no question. I did not get a yes or no answer. What I instead got was a false assumption and assertion that apostate prophet was going to the hadiths for some cowardly reason. When in fact what happened was that someone in the question asked if the Quran suggested that the Quran said that, and the apostate prophet said, no, the Quran does not say that. A hadith says that. You could agree and say, no, that's not in the Quran, that's in a hadith, and we can leave the hadiths aside. And I would say that we were all in agreement on that.
No, I never said he's doing the cowardly retreat. I'm saying the guy inside the chat, he's now running into the hadith because he's not, because the case,
the
case of the Quran is one. We already know there's no scientific errors.
The question was that according to the Quran, a baby's gender is determined by which parent climaxed first. So I asked the yes or no question that if it's in a hadith and not in the Quran, should we exclude it from this discussion?
Yes, it's not in either the Quran or hadith. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it doesn't really matter then. It's out. If it's not if it is in a hadith, but it is not in the Quran, then we will exclude it from this conversation. We all agree, right?
Right.
Okay. So there's another question as part of a super chat. Thank you, Jose Rivera. Rivera. I apologize for saying that wrong. According to the Quran, no, that's the same question again. It was the same one repeated. I apologize. And I don't. It looks like we don't have any more. Lalandra, if we have any more to post, and Lalandra, are you asking to be brought into, because you can add yourself to the chat anytime, but it seems that we're out of questions, and I'm just getting a confirmation of that before we go. Yes, we are out of questions. That is it. All right. So if you guys are amenable to this, I would like to continue only in as far as hashing out the definitions of what it means for your next debate, for what it means to be a scientific miracle, or how that would be established or disproved.
Could we do this by email, because I got to get going in a little while, so we can definitely.
That's perfectly all right.
We'll write out all that.
Okay. Give me 10 seconds. Anything that was not known during the time of the Quran, and anything that is a revolutionary scientific information to us, I could possibly regard as a scientific miracle.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say something if the debate is over and the question asking is over.
Yes, it appears that it is.
Okay. I taught middle school science, and what I seem to be getting here from Nadir is that science doesn't address the Quran. Therefore, apostate prophets' arguments that about anything that is mentioned in the Quran, science doesn't address that. Is that what you're saying, Nadir?
Oh, so what I'm saying is, what Apostate Prophet is doing, he's giving his own personal analysis of what he thinks science thinks, and he's giving his own personal analysis of what he thinks the Quran is saying. So he's trying to create a contradiction between the two. But as we've seen from science in the article which I quoted, we do not find any explicit contradiction between any verse of the Quran versus anything from a documented scientific source, from any kind of academic journals or anything like that. There is no contradiction, and that's what we saw.
Why is there no contradiction?
And now this is a very interesting question. There should be, if the Quran is not the word of God, it should contain these type of contradictions. You can find those contradictions in all these other books, but what is it about the Quran that we've been here for almost 2 hours, you cannot produce anything of documentation? And so what I say, this is a good evidence that the Quran is indeed what it claims to be, and that is a word of Allah. The word of God
is not a contradiction.
I'm sorry, what's that?
The moon split in half is not a contradiction.
No, as we have saw, it does not contradict science in any way. In fact, there was the actual incident where the moon completely disappeared all by itself. But science never had a problem of researching that. So the issue about the moon splitting in half, this is a supernatural claim. And as we saw from science, if something is supernatural, science does not confirm it or contradict it. Science actually cannot even be applied to it.
There's another way of phrasing that. If something can either be...
This is the point I wanted to get to. You're saying science doesn't contradict a supernatural claim like the moon splitting in half. But there's a reason why it doesn't do that. Because if it's a supernatural claim, there's no way to demonstrate a testable mechanism for how the moon is split in half.
Correct.
Science has, in the past, tried to go and disprove some of the stories in the Bible, like Noah's Ark. And I'm not talking about the claim in the Quran that people argue that Noah's Ark was a local flood. But they went and they looked at all the layers of the earth, and they tried to find a layer all over the earth that had a flood layer. So in order for science to address it, it has to have a testable claim or some way to find evidence for it. So like if the moon split in half, there would be evidence on the moon that happened. We can see some of the craters of the moon from past events on the moon. If it's split in half, there would be evidence left of that. You get where I'm going with this? So
sure.
Science can't disprove there's leprechauns either. That doesn't mean
right.
There's leprechauns.
There's another way to put that. If I want to just interject this one thing and I'm done. Right. In science, if something can neither be indicated, nor vindicated, nor verified, nor falsified, so that there's no way to show that it's true, or to show the truth of it, or to prove it wrong if it is, then it has no value in science.
It's a tool. Science is a tool. And that doesn't mean that it actually happened. Like if I had a claim that I said that in the Bible that you could move mountains with the faith of a mustard seed, which is a metaphor, so it's not meant to be taken literally. But I say, just that tiny amount of faith, science doesn't address that. Science can address whether it's the smallest seed in all of the earth, right?
I think the problem that we have here is very easy to summarize. The problem that we have here is that Nadir Ahmed basically sees the challenge as such that if there is something that we can describe as accurate, as scientifically accurate in the Quran, then it is definitely accurate. And if there is something that we can that is seemingly scientifically inaccurate and points at something which seems to be in contradiction with the natural world, then that simply means that it is describing something supernatural, which we can not verify, not observe, and therefore not see as a scientific statement. So what he's doing is that if something is definitely clearly scientifically accurate to him, then it is accurate. And if something is inaccurate in the Quran and not in agreement with natural world, then that is a miracle referring to the supernatural, which we cannot describe. So the problem that we are having here is that no matter what we do, it is impossible for Nadir Ahmed to ever accept the fact that there are scientific mistakes in the Quran, which is why I said the difference between us is that I can accept that the Quran makes a scientifically accurate statement. He will never accept that the Quran makes scientifically false statements. And I think we have clearly observed today that
Can I answer all of that?
we can clearly see today that the Quran has been scientifically disproven once again.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Can I answer all of that?
We don't want to do multiple final statements, so we're just going to let Nadir say his last thing,
sure,
and then we'll be done. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to add
So
something to
I understand.
Let's just go ahead with Nadir.
Yeah, I understand what you are saying, that you would see signs of a moon splitting and things like that. That is if it happened naturally. But if you look at the story about the moon splitting, this is a supernatural event. So God can do this in any way he chooses to do so. He could leave no trace behind, or you could choose to leave trace behind. But the issue tonight, I think the argument from silence is, I think, what the problem here is. But before I go there, I also want to respond to Aaron Ra. He said, okay, well, yeah, when it comes to supernatural, the proper position here is science cannot prove it or disprove it. Rather, science remains silent. But to say that it has no value, that is an opinion, and that's your opinion. But let me just
it's not an opinion. Okay. That's science. If you can't contribute any knowledge, if you can't show that it's true or false, it has no value in science. That's not my opinion. That's a basic scientific principle.
Let us agree to disagree.
Even I
let
know
us
that.
agree. Let us agree to disagree. Okay, I feel like you're giving me an opinion, but that's fine.
Okay,
I understand
you feel incorrectly.
Okay, Aaron. All right. Okay, so now here is an argument from silence. I think this really explains it. This is the fallacy of reasoning states that if a record of an event cannot be found, then that event did not occur. This argument is erroneous because an event could have happened even if no record of it could be found. In other words, lack of record does not disprove an event.
Like the moon splitting into the giant moon in the sky splitting into.
All we can do is admit that there's no evidence of it. And therefore,
for or against, there's no evidence for it.
So we cannot honestly say that it happened.
If you look at this one statement, you cannot say there's evidence for it or against it. There's silence.
So you can't say that it happened.
We can't show the truth of it. There is no evidence of it. So we're done.
Logically, you just shot yourself in the foot. I mean,
so let Peter go ahead and take us out. I think we're done.
Okay. Thank you.